This is the Jedburgh podcast. I'm the creator and host, Fran Rachopi. Each episode, I speak with transformative leaders, visionaries, drivers of change, and those dedicated to winning, no matter the challenge. The Jedburgh podcast is founded in the lineage of the special operations Jedburgh teams of the past and is produced in partnership with Talent War Group, a management consulting and executive search firm focused on helping you optimize the people side of your business. We're sponsored by Jersey Mike Subs. Together, we share the mission of giving, making a difference in someone's life. Visit the Jedburgh podcast, Talent War Group, and Jersey Mike Subs on the web and on social media. A percentage of all proceeds is dedicated to the Special Operations Warrior Foundation. Snowboarding has quickly become one of the most popular sports in the Winter Olympics. The halfpipe is snowboarding's marquee event. Its tricks require athletes to combine physical capability, mental focus, and their own artistic self-expression as they launch themselves 20 feet in the air while spinning around up to 4.5 times. Or, as my guest this episode explained, nailing a 1620. In our second episode of our coverage of the 2022 Winter Olympics, Lucas Foster joined me just before hopping his plane to Beijing. Lucas is the newest member of the US Olympic Snowboard team and has his eyes set on making an impact at the Games and in the sport, a sport in which America has dominated since its Olympic debut in 1998. We cover the halfpipe and how to combine amplitude, variety, and execution to convince the judges of your performance. Lucas shares what it's like to stand beside snowboarding legend Shaun White and what he's learning as the rookie on the team. Lucas grew up in Telluride, Colorado, a town known more for skiing. Without a halfpipe, he had to be creative, resilient, and adaptable. Lucas shares with me how organically growing in the sport has kept him grounded, humble, and gracious to be considered as one of the sport's best. We're launching this episode in the middle of Lucas's 3-day Olympic snowboard competition. Join us as we cheer him on, the rest of the U.S. team, and we vie for victory in the 2022 Beijing Olympics. Lucas, welcome to the Jedburgh podcast.
Thanks, man. Happy to be here.
Congratulations on making the 2022 U.S. Olympic team. And I appreciate you taking a few minutes of spending it with me. I know you got a lot of things going on. You're leaving for China in a couple of days. You're up there in beautiful Summit County, Colorado. I'm jealous. And, for those of the listeners who are going to watch this on YouTube, I'm going to start this episode saying that I'm in the total opposite place of you right now. I'm in the Caribbean. We came down here for a couple of days for a college reunion. And then you and I spoke yesterday and we're like, yep, let's get it done. Let's get it done before China. But I'm here in the hotel room in the heat. You're up in Colorado in the winter snow. And I had to actually configure my microphone to fit into this tissue box. I don't know if people can see it because I totally forgot the boom arm for my stand. So we have total different worlds, but we're jumping in on this conversation. And I do appreciate your time because I know you got a lot going on.
Oh yeah, no, I'm happy to be here and glad we could do it before I head out.
So let's start with the Olympics. You were certainly no stranger to competition. You've been on the U.S. snowboard team for 4 years. You've competed in many of the international and U.S. events during that time. But Beijing is going to be your first Olympics. So rookie to the team. A couple weeks ago or last week, you finished 5th at the U.S. Grand Prix in Mammoth. You were the highest American to finish there. You finished 7th in the World Cup in Switzerland. So you're up there and you're competing at the highest level. But what does making the U.S. Olympic team for your first time mean to you?
Oh man, it means a lot. I mean, the U.S. team is so competitive. Pretty much everyone on the team, has the ability to make the U.S. team. And there's, like 8 or 9 of us that are gunning for 4 spots, and it's really just all about who can perform consistently and get it done at the right time. And I always knew in the back of my mind that I'd be able to do it. It was just more of a matter of like, all right, is it going to happen? And just to watch it all come together has been surreal. And like I've been on the team for 4 years, but I also was a total underdog going into this season. And, I went from being on the U.S. rookie team to being on the pro team this year to making the Olympic team the same year. So it's been a pretty quick evolution. And, it's pretty crazy still. Still hasn't hit me, but
it'll sink in. I mean, when do you think? Yeah. I think it'll sink in as soon as you're going to get on the plane, you're going to go over there, and then eventually you're going to turn around and go, wow, like here I am.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm really excited.
This year's team features some of today's and I'll caveat also yesterday's best men and women in the sport. I mean, the U.S. historically has one of the best, and actually the best by record performance in snowboarding in the Olympics. Snowboarding was introduced into the Olympics in 1998, and since then the U.S. has 14 golds and 31 medals in the 6 games since that time, and nobody's competed at that level or achieved that. On this team, in just the half pipe, you have Taylor Gold, Chase Josie, 2 of your teammates, each in their second Olympics. And we can't forget about and have to mention the legend of snowboarding, Shaun White, coming back for his 5th Olympics. Also on the women's side, Chloe Kim, gold medalist from the last Olympics, and also second-time Olympian Maddie Maestro are going in competition over there. As the rookie, you're sitting there, you're competing against these athletes. You've been in the competitions the last couple of weeks and months against them. You know, you talked about it setting in, but on the podcast, we talk about effective intelligence, about this concept of there's something that is learned and gained from being on Earth longer. You are in a great position here with people like Shaun White, who have been there, they've done that, they've achieved everything in this sport and are still competing at the highest level. And it's so commendable to watch and amazing for us as spectators to see that. What do you take from them, and what do they share with you? Because you're the next generation of leader in this sport.
Yeah, being on the team with those guys is pretty crazy because obviously I grew up watching Shaun White since before I could remember. And then Taylor and Chase, I've been kind of on the team with those guys for the last 4 years and have gotten pretty tight with them. And, I totally remember watching Taylor make the Olympics in 2014. That's back when I was a legit fan of snowboarding and was nowhere close to being in the same circle as him. And now Taylor's my roommate, so it's cool to just be here with him and watch how he approaches his career. And I totally respect how they go about their careers. And then Chase Josie's another example. Everyone's got a different style of how they compete and how they train and how they go about their careers. So it's really cool to watch them. And you can pull value from everyone's career, and you really can, you don't have to be so, black and white, okay, this guy does it this way, so every other guy, that doesn't do it that way sucks. It's all right, I see, little things that Taylor does to succeed, little things that Chase does, things that Shaun does. And, that approach has really helped me just kind of feel like I'm a well-rounded rider that's able to, implement different styles into my career. So it's crazy to be kind of hanging with those guys now, and especially Shaun, because he's so much older than me. He's 35, and I
35. I'm 42. Now you're making me feel old.
Well, he's been around forever, and I never thought that I'd be on an Olympic team with Shaun, just because he's gone to every Olympics pretty much. And so it's cool. I got a lot of respect for those guys.
Well, in our last episode, I was telling you we spoke with Steven Nyman, and Steven has been on the U.S. Olympic. He's been on the U.S. national team in skiing for the last 20 years since he was 19. He's 39. He's going to be 40, and he's a legend on the skiing side. Made it to 4 Olympics. He was pushing this year to make it into his 5th, and then I think it kind of fell out at the end, and he was vying for that last spot, and it went another way on him. But huge supporter of the podcast. We love Steven here, and we look forward to his continued success, and we'll be tracking that. But we were joking about this too, is when you look from our perspective as kind of the older guys, you got to develop that younger generation of leader, and it's really important to see that come to fruition, and it's cool to watch. I want to ask you about the teamwork. We talk a lot about teamwork as one of our core values. It's one of our 9 characteristics of elite performance that we talk about in special operations, one of the things we assess and select folks on. But in snowboarding and in the halfpipe, there's 2 elements to this. There's the individual competition side where you need to have, individuals have to perform at their best, and to some extent, and you are competing against your teammates. But then there's also a team factor here, because the better the U.S. does, the more medals they win, the more it adds to the medal value. So there's this team collective.
Hmm.
and a lot of the things that you spoke about helping each other and learning from each other. But can you talk about how does the team, now that it's selected, because up till this point there's certainly much more of an element of competition to try to get into those last four spots, how do you now come together, and how does it work collectively as individuals who are now going to form this team to go to China and in a lot of ways work together?
Yeah, for sure. I think making the Olympic team is really the hard part, especially for the US riders. So now that we've all made it, we all want to go there and put on our best performances, but we also want to see our teammates do their best too. That's the ultimate dream, is make it to the Olympics and have the best run of your life. And that's really all you can control, because snowboarding is a judge sport, and there's not really like a specific criteria for the judging. It's literally like, does this judge like your run? And all you can really do is focus on you and what you can do. And we're all such good friends, and I want to see Taylor do the run of his life. I want to see Chase do the run of his life, and Shaun, and then let everything, and obviously myself, and then we let everything else just fall into place as it should. Again, like, it is an individual sport, so like, my performance doesn't necessarily help Taylor or Chase, but in a way it kind of does, because we feed off of each other. I watch Taylor put down a good run. That gets me stoked. It gets me all pumped up and inspired to go give it my all too. And the end of the day, we're all happy for each other no matter what happens.
The subjective nature of the sport, like you just said, it's a judge sport, and so with Steven, we talked about it's about timing, and the timing level between what separates first from second and even fourth is often a tenth of a second, a hundredth of a second can be the difference between a gold medal and not even making the podium. When you
Yeah.
look at the sport that's judged like this, and we previously over the summer we had spoken with Olympic gold medalist in platform diving, Laura Wilkinson, and another judged sport. How do you approach that competition, and how do you actually frame that in your mind? Like, what do you have to actually hit and take in as really the inputs that help you to decide what you're going to do out there that gives you the best chance of scoring highly?
Yeah, I mean, you have a rough idea of what you need. Like, these days in snowboard halfpipe, you need a 1260. You need to have amplitude is pretty much the most important one, how high you go out of the pipe. You could do a run that's maybe not super technical with, kind of smaller tricks, but you could go massive and score pretty well. And then you also got to be clean, just wall to wall. So we have a good idea of what the judges want, but it's like the the tricks are getting so big these days that a lot of the riders are kind of just doing the same runs and the same tricks. So that's where you really start splitting hairs of like, okay, like, sometimes you can do some of your tricks higher up in the pipe and get scored better, or you can, throw in some creative tricks that some riders aren't doing to score better. But in a nutshell, you want to have some big tricks that, like, 1260s or 1440s, or these, now we're seeing triple corks and 1620s. Having like that one finale trick is super important. That's kind of how I look at it. It's like, all right, I need to have my 12s. I need to have my like banger trick, and I also need to go massive and execute it clean. And that's really all you can know. Like, some people think there's like, trick books of like, okay, this, frontside 900 scores a 6 out of 10. It's not like that. It's, the criteria for judging is amplitude, variety, execution, and overall impression. So that's really all you can work around.
It's funny to think about how far the sport has come, because when it was
Hmm.
introduced and they launched the X Games and everybody started watching snowboarding come up, in the winter sports arena, somebody would launch like a 360 and you'd be like, "Whoa, that's crazy!" They turned around in the air, and now you're talking about 1440s, 1620s. I mean, we're talking like 3-4 revolutions in the air.
Mm-hmm.
The sport is a combination, in my mind. We talked a little bit about this with skiing, of this physical capability and this technical requirement, and then also this mental and emotional strength that's required to actually conduct these feats of physical activity. How do you break down the sport? Do you look at it in terms of there's a physical component, there's a technical component, and then there's a mental component as well? And is there any other factor that you throw in there? And how do you then balance those three in your preparation, in your training, and then we actually get out there and you're standing on top of the wall?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, like we all started snowboarding for the love of it and for the sole idea of it's kind of an art for most of us and a way of self-expression. And but I think in competing, like competing is super fun and it's a double-edged sword because it is dangerous, it is stressful at times, but it's very rewarding. I think for these high-level tricks that really require a lot of focus, yeah, it's a total blend of physical and mental. And for me, like there's no difference between the body and the mind. The body is the mind, and your physical is always going to be feeding your mental game. You're never going to go out there and try these big tricks if your body's all beat up because that's going to be playing into your mindset of like, like this, you know, part of my body's in tons of pain. I don't feel good. It's all about feeling good and feeling confident and feeling, having that fine balance of, you know, feeling powerful and also feeling relaxed and feeling like you can really kind of breathe deep and stay grounded before trying these big tricks. If you're too jacked up, you're not going to be focused. You're not going to be rooted. You might, do some crazy stuff out of impulse. And then obviously if you're not powerful enough and you're not aggressive enough, then you may not be pulling the trigger at the right time. You might be just kind of dragging your feet. So, yeah, it's a total blend, but again, the body is the mind and there's no difference between the two, in my opinion.
You've been called perpetually calm and collected. And I'm hoping for a second you could kind of talk me through an evolution of one run on the downhill. You're standing there, you're on top of the wall, you're at the top of it, and it's go time. What's
Hmm.
going through the mind, and then as you are into the run now, you've got 4 or 5 opportunities to really send it. What's going through the mind as you launch off the top, and then you get into those first, second, third, fourth, fifth attempts?
Man, it's always changing, like this season, even I remember the first contest of the year compared to the last one I did at the X Games, and just seeing how my approach has evolved and how much I've learned just through 5 contests. I think we've done 4 or 5 events. It's crazy, but I think the cool thing about half pipe snowboarding is you have to be fully, and not just half pipe, but snowboarding in general, is you have to be fully present. If you're thinking too much about the third hit in the pipe, you're going to mess up on your first hit or your second hit. And every hit requires full presence, full stillness, and full attention. That's what's cool about half pipe is if you mess up the first hit, it kind of ruins the rhythm of your whole run, and it's really hard to correct course. So, it's these building blocks. But when I'm up there about to drop in, it's hard to explain exactly what's going through my mind. It's almost like you enter this kind of state of no mind and flow state. That's kind of the goal is you don't want to be thinking. And leading into the contest, you're thinking the whole day and you're, not fighting to stop thinking, but you're trying your best to like click into that flow state, when you're lacing up your boots at the bottom of the mountain or something. But once you strap in and kind of realize like, okay, this is what I do. I snowboard. I've been doing these tricks for years, and this is what I love to do, and this is what I've been dreaming of doing since I was young. All you can really think of is thank you, in my opinion. Like I'm super blessed to do this, and I'm gonna trust, have full trust in my preparation for these events, and full trust in my skills, and that's really what's helped me this season is just having that inner knowing and that unwavering belief of like I belong right here, and it's all going to work out. Having that faith is important.
Well, and your story is pretty cool too, because you didn't grow up in a town that was necessarily fully embracing of the snowboarding culture. You grew up in Telluride, Colorado. I mean, absolutely one of the most beautiful places in the world. But it did take Telluride a while to kind of come around to snowboarding. I mean, they didn't, from what I know from living there and being there, and then also checking on some research today, they didn't actually even incorporate snowboarding onto the mountain until 2004, 2005. But there was no half pipe there for you
Mm-hmm.
growing up, and there was no snowboarding team. So people questioned your ability to compete at this level because they said that quote, got a late start compared to others. You said, quote, there were a lot of people that didn't think I would make it very far because of my situation, living in a place with no half pipe and not really being part of a team. You called growing up in Telluride a unique upbringing. Can you talk about growing up there, what it was like, and why was it a unique upbringing?
Yeah, I mean, growing up in Telluride was amazing, all things aside, because as you said, yeah, it is one of the most beautiful places in the world, and the ski area there is really revolved around free skiing and like, or not free skiing, but free riding. So like, just riding the mountains rather than like riding terrain parks or half pipes. It's all about riding just the mountain in front of you, and the terrain is very, like we would say, the terrain is gnarly. It's really steep. It requires you to be a good snowboarder or a good skier, and that's what I learned how to snowboard on was this gnarly terrain. And it was a very organic upbringing. Like there was never, I remember till I was like 14, I didn't really, like, I knew about the Olympics and the X Games and contests, but I didn't really like know how to get into it, didn't really care to get into it. I just loved snowboarding. And, for the first 4 years of my snowboarding career, you could say like it was just free riding around the mountain with my friends, with my family, doing it on the weekends. Like I went to normal school till I was 16 years old. And, where the unique part comes in is most halfpipe snowboarders, especially the riders I'm competing with today, grew up going to academies for skiing and snowboarding, grew up, doing online school and doing, these ski and snowboard programs 5 days a week, which is amazing. There's no disrespect to that at all, but that's kind of what is required these days if you want to make it. You either got to have that kind of foundation or you got to have a ton of money to be able to, go to New Zealand in the summer, or go to Mount Hood in the summer and train and like do all these expensive camps and stuff. As I got older, I did get more opportunities and I made the right connections to slowly get into those more like elite camps, like BK Pro, for example. Bud Keen, he's one of the legendary coaches in snowboarding. He, maybe a couple times every couple of years would give me the opportunity to come to his camps for either free or for really cheap and let me just ride the half pipe. And that's really where I got my start to actually seriously competing in half pipe was situations like that, where it's like, all right, I get to go to Copper Mountain for a week. I'm gonna get the most out of this. Um, but yeah, like Telluride didn't really have a good program. They have the Telluride Ski and Snowboard Club, which is more of a grassroots program for kids learning how to snowboard and wanting to get into the lower level competitions. But I remember when I was first getting into the amateur level events, I had to kind of do all my own research and figure out like, all right, these are the events I got to go to. This is how you get to this point. And luckily it all came together. But yeah, it was a very unique upbringing, and it definitely there's not really many people that I'm competing with today that had that type of upbringing. But I think that's what sets me apart, and that's what's cool. I don't think it's cool for everybody to have the same exact upbringing. You got to have people from different walks of life to make this sport unique and to make it more of a culture rather than just some cookie cutter sport.
Why half pipe? If I mean, you said you grew up more on the slope side, and I watched a bunch of videos of you competing on the slope side. And why make the transition to half pipe?
I mean, growing up, I rode half pipe just kind of here and there when I'd go do slope style contests. Um, and it was really fun. Like I had a blast riding half pipe, and I would do pretty good because I was a skateboarder, still am, and half pipe is pretty similar to skateboarding and like bowls and stuff. So yeah, I kind of just like kept doing it for fun. And then as I got a bit older, I think when I was like 17, I remember one specific event where I learned frontside 900s the day of the event. I think it was the nationals when I was 20 or when I was 17. And I pretty much accidentally did it like 20 feet out, which at the time that was not what I did. Like I usually would go like 10 feet out in the pipe, and
Hmm.
I caught an ice patch and went huge, stomped it. And I remember just that video kind of getting a lot of attention. And one thing led to another. In a nutshell, I got opportunities from that one clip to go train and ride at the US snowboard team that spring. And then opportunities like what I was telling you about Bud Keen, just those opportunities I was getting to go ride half pipe. I was progressing and getting better and better and better. And then the next season, I got put on the US snowboard team, on the rookie team. And kind of right there, I was like, all right, maybe this half pipe thing is my calling. I'm getting all these opportunities. I'm, getting more attention. I'm kind of like naturally just being considered more of a half pipe rider now. So that was 4 years ago, 2018, when I got on the team. So that was pretty much it.
Yeah, and then you had to decide I got to lean into this thing, and it's working out for you. How the half pipe itself is like ice down. I mean, it's how hard does it hurt when you fall off that thing? I'd have to ask that question. I know it's sort of a stupid question, but I have to ask that
No, it,
question.
it hurts for sure. Um, that's what makes it so calculated. You gotta, one little mistake and you're landing either on the deck and falling into the bottom, or you're landing really deep in the pipe, and that doesn't feel good. So it's the real deal, that's for sure.
Yeah, I had a period of time in my life where I thought I was I was going to start getting into the terrain park and everything on my skis, and so you get in there and you get like a false sense of confidence, and you're like, yeah, I can do this thing. Like I hit a couple of these pretty
Totally.
well, and then I hit one, and as soon as my skis made contact with the rail, they like slipped out from under me, and all I remember was seeing my skis above my head, and then I heard the people
Yeah.
behind me as I was in the air, like, oh. I came down
Hmm.
right on that thing and had a contusion on my ass for about 2.5 months.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's a very dangerous sport, which is a double-edged sword because it makes it really fun, but it also makes it really scary.
So we're going into, you got a couple weeks, you're going to be in competition. We talked a lot about the evolution of the sport, what you got to put together. Any sneak peek on what you're planning on sending when you get up there?
Yeah, I mean, the run I've been doing this year has been treating me decently well. I learned this trick in Saas-Fee, Switzerland this year called a backside double 1620. So I'm hoping that I'm gonna do that in the finals for sure. That's a trick that doing that trick clean, I think it'll definitely treat me well. So that's kind of the main one. I'm hoping that I can kind of shift around some of the tricks that I'm doing in my run just in different spots or different points in the run. So I have a good idea of what I'm going to do, but every half pipe is different. So you kind of get there and you get to get a good feel for the pipe, and then you can make a call from there. It's always disappointing sometimes when you think of a run and then you show up and the pipe is like, you know, just not, what good for that run. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll see. But I've heard the half pipe over there in Beijing is super good. So I think it'll be a great event.
I want to ask you about impact. This is a driving factor for me in my life, what I ascribe to do, and also on the podcast. We talk a lot
Hmm.
about impact. One of your goals that you've spoken about is to make and leave an impact. You credit your upbringing for your ability to relate to others, which you've called the first step to making an impact. In episode 44, we interviewed Patrick Murphy, first congressman who was an Iraq war veteran to be elected to Congress, also was the secretary of the Army. for a period of time. But Patrick said, you might disagree, but you never become disagreeable. You've said, quote, you've got to be able to meet people halfway and understand other kids' situations. If you're too elite, then it's going to be hard to make an impact, unquote. You and I yesterday, when we were catching up, spoke about the support you've shown to veterans and also to kids who are coming up in snowboarding and looking for snowboarding to provide solace in their lives. I like the humility that you display here. Humility is one of our 9 core characteristics as well. Can you define what you mean when you say that if you become too elite, then it's going to be hard to make an impact?
Yeah, totally. I think just these last few years being in this pro snowboard scene, you really get to see where snowboarding is at, and even skiing. It's such a elite silver spoon sport these days, and snowboarding especially never started like that. And I think that's what draws so many people to snowboarding is the culture and I know for me, I look back to when I started snowboarding and I was young and I wasn't really sure, like, 8 years old, you don't know what you want to do in life. And then you find you know, this piece of wood with bindings and you get to slide down a mountain and try tricks. It's like the world, you feel like the world is yours when you find that snowboard. And I just know how far it's brought me. And, now I'm seeing that like half pipes are so hard to find and you got to be swimming in money to be able to get into this sport, which sucks to see because it's going to make it harder and harder for kids to get into it. So what I mean by, if you're too elite, it's hard to make an impact. Kids can't relate to being, most kids at least can't relate to being sent around the world to go train in the half pipe when you're 9 years old. But kids can relate to being all right, I'm a normal 9-year-old kid and I just want to have a good time and have a good time with my friends. That's like the most important thing. And that's, what kids, that's what's accessible for kids is like have fun, kind of find yourself in a sense. I know snowboarding has helped me really discover who I am and discover kind of my path in life. That's relatable. It's not relatable watching, people do triple corks on TV, even though that's kind of like what we're participating in. People got to know how it all started, and we got to come back to our roots of, beyond competing, beyond the Olympics. It's all a form of self-expression.
Yeah, that culture piece is so vital in the sport. I mean, you see it, and it you talked about skateboarding and bringing the skateboarding culture, and you invoke that. I mean, you see it on the mountain, and I think when I envision my kids growing up, and I want them to become good skiers and be afforded the opportunity that I did too. It is cool to see these young kids out there, but you also do have to remember, like you said, that they are, so many of them are just normal kids who want to go out there and have a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for me, I really was disturbed when I kind of got into this whole scene, kind of seeing some of these riders I looked up to and seeing how kind of closed off they were and how, a lot of them, not a lot of them, but some of them are too cool for school. And that was such a letdown for me because that made me not really want to like be a part of it. I was like, oh, I looked up to these guys for years and now they kind of are like, like I said, too elite. And that isn't inspiring. It isn't making me excited. Obviously, you can set that aside and make the decision to realize there's so much, good in the sport and so many amazing people. You don't want to focus on those few bad apples, but yeah, like just seeing how some of those riders are so like closed off and so like on their own program and I'm not going to name names, but that sucks. I understand you got to do what you got to do, but man, you're not going to leave an impact and inspire people if you're just like, on this other planet,
Yeah. Yeah. Never lose it, and that'll be awesome to see and watch you grow and kind of take the reins of this sport over the next couple of years. And, you're in the position now to form that culture. and drive that impact throughout, not only those who touch you, but the whole sport of snowboarding. I know it.
Yeah, thank you. That's the goal.
Lucas, as we close out, the Jedburghs had to do 3 things every day as core foundational tasks to be successful in their world. They had to be able to shoot, they had to be able to move, and they had to be able to communicate. If they were proficient in these 3 core foundational tasks, then their energy, their focus could be on the other challenges that came their way. Mm-hmm. What are the 3 things that you do every day in your world to be successful?
Number 1 is I always do some sort of form of meditation and just connection to kind of quiet my mind. And I'm a pretty spiritual person, and I've had a lot of mentors in my life that have kind of led me down this path, and it's really been the most life-changing thing that I've implemented in my life. So, what I mean by any form of connection is, taking 20 minutes to sit and meditate, or taking time to, do moving meditation or doing breath work. I've even gotten into, forms of prayer and gratitude to pretty much just disconnect from this craziness that we're living in these days, especially these last couple months, leading up to the Olympics. And now that I'm going on Friday, everything is just so wild, and you really have to take time to breathe. So, things that just make me slow down and breathe and stay grounded it's everything. Because like I said, if you're too jacked up, if you're too like all over the place with things you got to do, if you're too much of a busybody, it's really hard to, not just burn out. So meditation is number 1. Number 2 is movement. I really believe that movement is medicine for our bodies. That's what our bodies are built to do. And, like I said, movement is really a form of meditation as well. Things like Tai Chi and Qigong have really helped me just kind of slow down and quiet my mind, but also keep my body moving. And that's kind of what you want to get to in snowboarding, is a point where snowboarding feels very relaxed and you can do these complex tricks while feeling, tuned in and still. So movement is number 2. And then number 3 is also just kind of connecting with people around me. Like that's the biggest one is, relationships are everything in life. And, having things like meditation keep you grounded and, be tuned in with yourself really help you have these fruitful relationships in life and help you attract those relationships to you. Having a relationship with yourself is the start. And then once you get to that point, you get to really experience what life is all about, which is, love and connection and friendship. So, I do my best to just, be present with those around me. And that's always a, difficult thing, especially when you're busy. It's hard to remember, okay, I got to call that guy today, or check in with my family, or, go snowboard with my friends. It's really difficult to stay on that, but you feel so good after you've taken the time to just check in on people and to give your time to people and feel that love coming back to you.
Yeah, that ties into your impact too. It starts with building the relationships and keeping them. Meditation, movement, and relationships. I really like those 3.
Yeah.
We talk about the 9 characteristics of performance that are defined by special operations forces: drive, resiliency, adaptability, humility, integrity, curiosity, team ability, effective intelligence, and emotional strength. And elite performers, they exhibit all 9 of these, and they exhibit variations of a number of them at any one time, depending on the situation that they're in. And then I take one at the end of each one of these conversations, and I think about my guests and the conversation that we've had and learning about them. And for you, I think about emotional strength. And I think about emotional strength for you because it sums up so many of the things that you've spoken about. You come from, Telluride, where you had to figure out, how am I going to become a half-pipe snowboarder in an area that doesn't have all these opportunities that everyone else has. You've maintained humility as you've built your career, which is tremendous, and I commend you for that. You look forward into the future and you think about, how am I going to continue to drive impact? And you look at the competition and the way that you compete, and you approach it with gratitude. All of those things require a tremendous amount of emotional strength to bring calm to chaos, because as you said, it can become chaotic. But when we're grounded, when we do things like meditate, we provide movement, and we create meaningful relationships that drive impact to ourselves and those around us, that takes emotional strength. And I commend you for displaying that in everything that you do.
Thank you. Really appreciate that.
Well, Lucas, you got a couple of days before you hop on a plane. I'm wishing you the best. Everybody who listens to the Jedburgh podcast is wishing you the best. We will be behind you as you compete in Beijing at the Olympics. We wish you the best. We'll be cheering for you. We'll be cheering for Team USA. Get out there and nail the backside double 1620. Continue to bring impact to the sport and to kids and to all of those who admire and support you. When you get up to the top of that half pipe and you get ready to drop in, you've put the work in, send it with conviction, brother. We're right behind you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
American Jedburghs went on to form the foundation of the United States Special Forces and the Special Activities Directorate of the Central Intelligence Agency. Thanks for listening to the Jedburgh podcast. I'm your creator and host, Fran Rachopi. Join us next week for a new episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full episodes, highlights, and other behind-the-scenes content. If you like what you heard, give us a like and leave a review. Follow me, Fran Rachopi, Talent War Group, and our sponsor Jersey Mike Subs on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Send your comments and inquiries to media@talentwargroup.com. As former members of Special Operations Forces, the Jedburgh podcast and Talent War Group contribute a percentage of all profits to Special Operations Warrior Foundation, supporting the families of our fallen warriors. Thanks for joining us on this episode. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.